So, welcome to my second channel, and I actually wanted to start with my very first video, which is talking about the Switch 2 exclusives of 2026. But I guess my first video has changed to talking about the new OSM model for the Switch 2. And I just happened to spot it as I was scrolling through Twitter. So, starting things off, what is this OSM model? What does it stand for? And what does this have to do with the Switch 2? Well, it can actually all be explained in this article right here. Hold on, let me just open it from my browser. It is open on my OBS, but not on my browser. And as you can see here, it is spotted in this post by Sky that he or she said, I think I've discovered something interesting, but I have no idea what it implies. And of course, it's, oh my god. On Nintendo's account portal, there is an unused model code under the name OSM. The Switch 2's model code is BEE. So that is actually the current Switch 2 model that we have, and you can actually spot it if you just open this, this lid right here, and you can actually read the code from under here. Now, what this guide continued to say is that the portal has images for each Switch model, and requesting OSM returns an image of the Switch 2. Now, okay, all those links, I gotta control my mouse somehow. But anyways, continuing on, the thing is that at first I thought that the OSM model is just another Switch 2 model that exists in a different region. The code for each Switch 2 model is actually different depending on the region. As you can see here, I have full proof right here because my Switch 2 right here is actually, this is the Chinese model, and as you can read from here, I don't really know if you can see it, but it actually says the HAE model. I will take a photo of it and show it on screen right here. But yeah, this might be a different code to a different region of the same Switch 2. It might not be a new model, but rather a model that we have. But then I went ahead and read this article here, and somewhere here it said that the model code appears to have been added as early as mid September. And we know that the Switch 2 actually released on July, which is before mid September of 2025. They're talking about 2025 right here. So this actually justifies that the OSM model is an actual new model and not just a model code of a different region. Now, going back to our initial article, if you don't really know about the current codes that we have for the different models, it actually mentions right here. We have the HAC for the original Switch, the HEG for the Switch OLED, the HDH for the Switch Lite, and the BEE for the Switch 2. So those are the different codes that exist for all the Switch devices. But then I went to another article, strangely. We will go a little bit off topic right here because this is actually interesting and I didn't know about it till now. So basically, if you go to this article and highlight this part, it is actually talking about the BEE model of the Switch 2. It's basically the same article talking about the OSM variant. And as you can see here, it mentions the Switch 2 has the BEE model, and the other Switch models go by HAC, HAD, HDH, and HGE. So why did it mention HAD? Was that a new model for the Switch that we didn't know about? Well, it is actually something that was explained by IGN right here. So the HAC model is the original Switch's model, where it faced a lot of battery issues, which is why they started developing the HAD model, which you can see here. You can actually tell the difference between the HAC and the HAD models by the color of the box. If there's a gray or white area right here, then you have the old HAC model. If it is colored red, then you have the HAD model, which is basically the patched version of the original Switch model in 2017. And this is actually kind of interesting. And I count myself as lucky because I didn't even know that there was a difference between the first and the patched models. I didn't even know the Switch one had a patched model. So I count myself as lucky to have bought the colored model rather than the previous unpatched model. Otherwise, I wouldn't have enjoyed Splatoon 2 or Mario Odyssey as much. Those are the first two games that I bought for my Switch 1. That was before I got invested myself into the other uh, Switch first party games. So, going back to our original article right here, like I said before, the model appeared in mid September, and we only discovered it in mid January, if not the end of January, by the time that I upload this video right here. So it is kind of strange that we only found that out 3 months after it has already been added. And the reason that it is surprising is that Nintendo's leaking streak was at an all time high. Is it starting to decrease now that we're, finding out information a bit later? That's not necessarily true, I think, because leaks are still leaks, and whether or not you found it earlier or later, it is still count as a leak. So I still think that Nintendo's leak streak is still at an all-time high, which is of course a bad thing for Nintendo, but I guess it's a good thing for the customers such as ourselves, or maybe a good thing for the PC players to make fun of us for. So, anyways, moving on. Let me just put on full camera. Sorry, it's my first time. So, moving on to what we actually want to talk about is the predictions of what we think the OSM model might be. Now, I'll go over my initial predictions, which are false, before I go on to the predictions that make sense. So, first of all, I thought that it was going to be a Switch Pro. An actual Switch Pro. I know that the Switch 2 is considered a Switch Pro. It's supposed to be called a Switch Pro, at least in your guys' opinion. But I did say in my previous video, in my first channel, that the Switch 2 is not just an upgraded version of the Switch 1. It is an upgraded version of the Switch 1, but it's actually a super upgraded version of the Switch 1. We have 8 times the storage and 10 times the graphical performance. That's not just a normal upgrade. That is not any normal upgrade made on a system. So an actual Switch Pro, which might have, I don't know, 5 times the graphical performance, or maybe twice or 4 times the storage space, that would make sense for a Switch Pro. And it's actually one of my predictions for the OSM model. But then I thought again, why make a Switch Pro right now? Why make a Switch Pro right now when we can just make a Switch 2 Lite? Because a Switch 2 Lite would be more preferable compared to a Switch Pro, because that Switch Pro will only play Switch 1 games, and that Switch 2 Lite, with the same amount of power, will play Switch 2 games. So, this is one of my wrong predictions. My other wrong prediction is a Switch 2 Pro. I don't know what is wrong with me and Pro versions of the device. I mean, I did have the PS4 Pro, which is currently with my brother. He's currently enjoying playing GTA 5, probably waiting for the new GTA 6. But yeah, I predicted a Switch 2 Pro, which also doesn't make sense because this device is already overpriced. I bought it. I only bought it like a week after it released. I didn't buy it in day one, but still, a lot of people are still not used to the current price of the Switch 2, so I doubt that Nintendo is gonna make a Switch 2 Pro. It doesn't make sense, especially with the the price hikes of the RAM shortage situation. So then I predicted that the Switch 2 is gonna finally have an OLED model. Again, RAM prices situation. And OLED Switch 2 is going to be peak. It's going to be amazing. We are going to have a powerful system that's gonna have a better screen, and that's especially good for the current Switch 2 because not only does it have battery life problems, but the current Switch 2 also has a screen delay. So if it fixes it in the OLED model and applies that OLED screen on it as well at the same time, then that would be amazing. But then again, people are still not used to the current price of the Switch 2 model. I wouldn't say it is 100% like unwanted for people to have an OLED version of the Switch 2. A lot of people would like to have an OLED version of the Switch 2. It's just it will be too expensive. And like I said again, RAM price hikes. So those were my initial predictions, and they were absolutely wrong. So that leaves off with the Switch 2 Lite. Of course, it makes sense for us to have a Switch 2 Lite. But before I talk about the Switch 2 Lite prediction, I just want to talk about maybe a patched version of the Switch 2. Hold on, let me just charge my laptop. Okay, so why is a patched Switch 2 version one of my predicted choices? Exhibit A is that we have a patched version of the Switch 1, which, as you can see here, hold on, let me just open the article again, which, as you can see here, you can depict the difference between them through the box color, or maybe if you want to get technical, you can actually go look at the back bottom left, I guess, or right, depending on your perspective. Anyways, you can actually see the model number from here. But yeah, given the current problems that the Switch 2 has, I wouldn't say it has much problem with the battery life, but it's still a downgrade given that we have, a stronger device. So we would expect it to have stronger battery life. And the other problem that I wanted to talk about is, of course, I already mentioned it, the display delay. So the screen display delay for the Switch 2, it isn't just the worst amongst all PC gaming hybrids, but it's also the worst amongst all screens globally, and that's actually a big problem. It has the worst delay amongst all the screens in the world. So yeah, like I said, the screen display delay and the battery life problem, it would actually make sense to have a revised Switch 2 version. Of course, it will still have the same price as the original Switch 2, but it would at least be a better Switch 2. And that is actually good for the people who don't really have a Switch 2, but it would be bad for the people who already have an unpatched version of the Switch 2. So basically, they're gonna have to live with that unpatched version for the rest of their lives. But at least it isn't going to be as bad as having a Switch 2 OLED or a Switch Pro or maybe a Switch 2 Pro, because I've already discussed all the problems with those systems. But let's go on to the best prediction that we have is that the OSM model might be the Switch 2 Lite, which is going to actually be very epic for the industry of Nintendo. Now, why is this the top prediction of all consumers and customers? Is that the fact that it's going to be a cheaper Switch 2? It's going to be affordable to manufacture, given the RAM price hikes that is going to soon hit the Switch 2. And it is also going to be affordable for customers to play with. And this point alone can actually save Nintendo, since there are currently less people buying the Switch 2, and Nintendo is currently facing that dropping stock market. And I know everybody who hates the Nintendo franchise, whether you're a Nintendo fan or not, you're celebrating this. Uh, Cheers, whatever. Happy New Year. Where Nintendo is paying for all of its, crimes and whatnot. But yeah, I believe that a cheaper Switch 2, which is the Switch 2 Lite, would be amazing. And that is especially true since we don't really have any demanding first party games. Now, like I said before, the Switch 2 system is, currently it's a very powerful system, and it can run AAA games at the maximum performance it can. But when it comes to other games, such as, Metroid Prime 4 or even Age of Imprisonment, as an example, they don't demand as much graphical output as the AAA games do. So it would make sense to play those first party games, which are the seller of the Switch 2 systems, on a cheaper Switch 2, which is the Switch 2 Lite. So I wouldn't say that the Switch 2 Lite is the exact prediction that's going to happen, but I can guarantee that this is the predicted device that a lot of people want, and I've already discussed why people want that device, to publish, to happen, especially with our current situation. Although a Switch 2 Lite might face issues that can only be fixed if you only have the original Switch 2 model. Now, one of those issues is playing AAA games. So I already said before that the Switch 2 can play AAA games, and it is actually amazing that we can finally play AAA games on a Switch and then on a Nintendo handheld device, given that the graphical output is that strong. It maximizes on the graphical performance of the Switch 2 in order to play those AAA games. Now, with the Switch Lite, since it's basically a downgraded version of the Switch 2, more affordable, but a downgraded version of the Switch 2, it might not perform as well with the Switch 2 Lite as the Switch 2. I'm talking about the AAA games. It might not perform as well with the Switch 2 Lite. So the best that Nintendo could do is that they could either exclude the AAA games from the Switch 2 Lite, even though it is still a part of their seller for the Switch 2, or they can match the graphical performance of the Switch 2 to the Switch 2 Lite. I mean, it's gonna downgrade in all of its other features, but if it can match its graphical performance from the Switch 2 to the Switch 2 Lite, then the Switch 2 Lite might also play those AAA games. It'll still be like a lot heated up compared to the Switch 2, since it will have trouble with the fans and stuff, inside the device, but it'll still be able to play those AAA games at least. But like I said, this is not a guarantee. They might have a downgraded version of the graphical performance, which would not allow the Switch 2 Lite to perform well with the AAA games. I mean, I guess this is a problem, but not as big of a problem if you're someone who wants to play first party games. Although, what might be a problem is that the Switch 2 Lite is not going to be dockable. And that might be inevitable because Exhibit A, or maybe the only exhibit that you need, is that the Switch Lite, the OG Switch Lite, was not dockable. It wasn't a hybrid handheld. It was fully handheld with no detachable Joy-Cons. So no dock and no detachable Joy-Cons. And if this is the kind of system that you're okay with, I guess the Switch 2 Lite is the system for you. If not, then you might as well just wait up and save money for the Switch 2 for $450, which a lot of people are saying is expensive. I mean, gaming is already expensive as it is, but it is a problem for casual Nintendo gamers who just want to play casual Nintendo first party games. And they are, more used to the pricings of the previous Nintendo consoles, which was maxed out at 350, and that was the max, the max price of all the Nintendo consoles, till the Nintendo Switch 2 showed up. So, like I said, it is inevitable that it might not be docked. I mean, it is 100% not going to have detachable Joy-Cons, but with the docking situation, it is inevitable that there's no docked version of the Switch 2 Lite. However, I learned my lesson about coping. So I'm going to cope that the Switch 2 Lite might have a dockable feature, if they do announce it or hopefully, release it. But yeah, and from where did I learn my lesson? It is actually DK Bonanza. Now, I did talk about DK Bonanza, with the King K. Rool situation, saying that it is cope, and apparently I was wrong. King K. Rool was actually part of DK Bonanza. It wasn't just coping from all the the DK fans. So I learned my lesson, and now I started to join the coping community. So yeah, gonna start coping that the Switch 2 Lite, if the OSM model is a Switch 2 Lite, that it is going to be dockable. Hopefully, I mean, I already gave up on the fact that it has detachable Joy Cons, but it doesn't really matter since I can just use those Joy Cons if I want to play on tabletop mode and hopefully on dock mode. Yes, I'm saying dock mode because I am going to cope that the Switch 2 Lite is going to be dockable, for the docking station of the Switch 2. I'm also going to cope that Sakurai might add Smash characters. Trust me on this. He might add Smash characters to Curvy Air Riders. Believe it or not, this is Sakurai we're talking about. Curvy Air Riders is Smash 7, and Sakurai is gonna prove it by adding third-party Smash characters. So this is the post-recorded version of my video, and I couldn't record it before due to some personal stuff. So moving on to what I said last time, I talked about coping, given that I learned my lesson with the King K. Rool Bonanza experience. Although, despite my coping for the OSM model and the Switch 2 Lite situation, I'm still gonna cope. I still learned my lesson from the King K. Rool Bonanza situation. Although, when it comes to you guys, I think it would be better for you guys if you don't really get your hopes up too much for the OSM model. Now, I know I talked a lot about my predictions about the OSM model and what it means and whatnot, but I guess it would be better if you guys do not put your hopes up too much for the model itself, because I went to rethink it again, and then I came up to the conclusion that, as far as we are concerned, it is just a leak. It is just a rumor. We have nothing official from Nintendo themselves. So, as far as we're concerned, it is just something that someone blurted out from, Blue Sky. And as far as we're concerned, I mean, we Wind and Waves, Pokemon Wind and Waves might have been a leak that is unofficial, but at least compared to what we had with the OSM model, with the Pokemon Wind and Waves, we had more than enough eligible evidence that Wind and Waves was actually going to come, despite it being a leak and not something official from Nintendo. And that is unlike OSM model, which we do have some level of evidence from the post. I don't know, but it's not really something enough to go on with. So, long story short, it's better if you don't get your hopes up that we might have an OSM model, let alone a Switch 2 Lite model of the Switch 2. But like I said, if it's actually true, it might actually save the industry. And if it turned out to be true again, then we can actually come back to this video later, talk about it further in the future video where I talk about said leak and link that said leak of this video to the actual system when it is actually official. Like I said before, it might actually save Nintendo from its current dilemma, given the reasons that I've already given. So I think that is everything that I wanted to say. So thank you very much, guys, for watching. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe. I might have to come back to watch the previous recording along with this recording right here, since I might have flopped with some of the parts of the videos that I didn't want to flop with at all. But at the end of the day, it is just my first video with my second channel, and I actually might flop more before I perfect the types of videos that I actually want to make for this second channel right here. It is my first video, all in all. So thank you guys very much for watching. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe. I really hope that we can start off strong in the second channel, unlike what I had with my first channel. That because my first channel it was basically jumbled up. I do have a plan for it, but it started off uh, jumbled up. Like I don't know. It just scrambled. It didn't have a plan when it first started. So, anyways, thank you guys for watching. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe, and I hope to see you in the next video. Peace!